Hi, welcome to Bruce's Garage. I'm Bruce, and this is my garage. Yvan Lacroix. That's a name and a face that I know you know who that is. But do you know him really beyond his professional achievements in the detailing world? Do you know what makes him tick as a human? Did you know that he had his first job at age 10? In fact, it was his own business at age 10. You're going to learn about that and more in my one on one interview with Yvan, the man himself, where he reveals a lot about his upbringing, about his youth, about what inspires him. So I want you to come on in and really enjoy and sit back and relax with this one on one interview that I have with Yvan. I think you're going to really enjoy it. You don't even have to watch the video, you can just listen. So come on in and listen to Yvan Lacroix's story.
So I grew up in a French household, but we lived predominantly in Ontario, which is an English part of Canada. And in the house, we spoke French. And during the summers, both my parents worked English, or both my parents worked nights. Sorry. And having a 5-year-old staying in the house when you're trying to sleep during the day was not necessarily a good thing. So as soon as school was over, I was shipped off to Quebec to spend my summers in Quebec. And I'm of Generation X, as they say, the latchkey kids, and that was very true. At 5 years old, I was put on a train by myself and sent off to Quebec for the summer.
Wow. Wow.
And, my parents came and picked me up Labor Day weekend. And that carried on until I was in my teens. So having that flexibility in life, that mobility has always helped. Having the two languages has always been a good thing for me as well. French is my predominant language, but English is a second language for me. Other than that, I grew up regular household, two parents, two kids. My daughter, my sister is 13 years older than me. So I was able to see her make life mistakes that I didn't want to make.
So tell me again how you learned English because you don't speak with an accent.
Oh, I can speak with the accent as often as you like. It's not an issue for me to have the accent. I actually put on a fake American accent so people understand me better. But normally, if I don't think about it, this is what I sound like. So
Wow.
I had the typical French Canadian accent all the way through. But good friend of mine, Penn, the organizer, same way. Uh, we put on what we call our fake American accent so that we blend in, we fit. And if I go to India, I sound like the people from India as well. And if I go down to the southern US, I can talk with a drawl as much as you want. I worked down in Tennessee for a number of years, so I sort of picked that up. But it's a different part of life, and I just blend in and mix with the people I'm with.
Okay, now if you make me laugh so much, I'm gonna start crying here. And
No, no.
that is hilarious though. So I never so if you and Sylvie are talking, do you speak French then to each other
Yes.
regularly? You do.
Yeah. So Sylvie's English is not as developed as mine. She grew up on a farm. We met in our 30s. So we're a rebuilt family, as you could say. And she never, she learned in school the English that you guys learn Spanish or French in the US, very minimal.
Right.
And up until we met, she'd never spoken English. So, and it's just in the last sort of 10
Wow.
years that she's really, since we've been traveling more, that she's developed her English language skills, still learning every day and still getting better every day. But, when you're starting to learn a second language when you're in your 50s, it's not always easy.
No, I can't imagine um at all. But it's interesting to me. So when did you start learning English?
When I was 2 years old, actually.
Oh
So,
wow.
well, 5 years old, we'll put it that way. Uh, my parents worked for Imperial Tobacco, which is a large tobacco company in Canada. And when one of the factories was closing down, the factory in Granby, Quebec, where I'm from, my parents were given a choice. And that choice was Guelph, Ontario, which English speaking, Montreal or Quebec City, which are two French-speaking cities. They took a big risk for my sister and I to move to Ontario. My parents did not know 2 words of English when they moved here.
Wow.
So and they were in their late 30s. Um, I was a late child, and for them to take that risk and that stressor on them, for my sister and I was one of the best gifts I could have ever had. So it allowed me to do that. But up until the age of 5, I was at home all the time. And at home, we spoke French. And my parents, up till the day they passed away, I couldn't speak to them in English. It just felt wrong. So I could be,
Wow.
conversing with you in English, I'd turn around, speak to my parents in French, come back to English. But French remains the primary language for me.
Wow. Wow. Well, you speak English. I mean, I mean, honestly, when you say like you put on this American accent,
Mhm.
I mean, really, and how you just transitioned to your natural accent, just amazes me. I mean,
Mhm.
it's fascinating.
Right, and, I can transition à parler en français aussi rapidement que je peux transitionner to speaking in English. So,
Well, so did your parents like have the foresight that they knew there would be value in you learning English?
yes, that's 100% the reason they moved to Ontario.
Wow.
Because for them, so in the early '70s, we moved in 1970. And one of the big things, they were moving from Granby to Guelph, so 2 Gs, but they sold their house for $7,000 in Granby, and they bought an equivalent house in Ontario for $15,000,
Wow.
yet no pay increase. So it was a big move for them, and, they did it especially for my or not they weren't thinking of themselves, they were thinking of my sister and I, so.
Wow. So then, when did when did detailing enter into your life?
Well, my father was a car guy, so it always sort of been there, but it really entered as a profession when actually I was 12 years old. So when I was 10, I started cleaning offices. I had my own business, licensed and insured. Of course, it was under my parents' name, but I was the one running it. I was doing all of the work. And the office building that I was cleaning was lawyers, doctors, and real estate agents. I had my own little, cubby there that all the supplies were there. I just had to ride my bike there Saturday morning, clean their offices. I'd be done Saturday afternoon, and I was good. One of the lawyers asked me one day, "Can you clean my car?" And I said, "Sure. I've got experience. I've been cleaning my dad's car since I was 8." Uh, and I was 12 at this point, so I had 4 years
Yeah.
experience. Washed his car. He paid me more to wash his car than to do his office. So that, turned on the entrepreneurial bell. It rang and said, "I'm transitioning to detailing." But we didn't call it detailing back then. It was car washing. Detailing was a coin turned by Bud Abram of Detail Plus out in Washington. I'd say in the mid '90s.
Hmm.
But before that, we just called it car washing.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So detailing is a relatively new term. And it's one of the reasons people, the general public still doesn't really know what detailing is. It hasn't been around long enough to be part of the vernacular, part of what we know as, this is a career choice.
Right.
It's not quite there yet.
So I got to go back to that 10 years of age, though. So at
Yeah.
10 years of age, you have your own business. Like, how did that come about? Was that out of need? Was it?
No, it was purely out of, well, a need to um, fend for myself. And, I grew up in a great household. My parents were successful. So that wasn't a thing. It wasn't a need for money. It was just a need for a challenge. It was a need for providing for myself. My parents weren't poor. They're factory workers, but they had a good job in the factory.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I never wanted for anything, but I'm also not the kid. I was always ashamed to ask my parents for something. So if I wanted something, I'm not the one that would say, "Oh, I want a new, cassette deck for Christmas," the
Yeah.
1970s. So,
Right.
"I want an 8-track player." And my parents would have bought it for me, but that's not something I would have done is ask them for that. And when I saw the opportunity came, my parents bought and sold houses. Basically, the weekend that there was nothing left to do on the house was the weekend it was for sale. And the real estate agent that they had the same real estate agent, and we'd move every 2 years or so. That real estate agent knew exactly what my parents did to houses, how long it took them, and she started looking for a house for my parents 2 or 3 months before she knew they were ready to sell. There was never a for sale sign on any of my parents' homes. They just she already had a buyer for them. So
Wow.
one day she comes, my parents are selling their house and she said, "Oh, by the way, do you know anybody that could do office cleaning for me because my janitor left?" And I was in the living room there in the dining room table signing documents, and I put my hand up and say, "Hey, I could do it." And she said, "Yep, you're Jerry Monique's son. Go for it. We'll give you a try." So
Wow.
I started with the real estate agent's office the first week, and then the week after, I had the doctor's office, the lawyer's offices. So yeah, and it was in one it was actually in their home. They had a beautiful Victorian four-story house, like, late 1800s, huge, huge house, and they lived in the peak of the house. So they lived on the 3rd floor, and then their office was on the 2nd floor, doctor's office was on the 1st floor, and the lawyer's offices were in the basement, and it was sort of a half basement. So one side you went out to the parking lot, the other side was buried. So quite
Wow.
a huge house, and it had an elevator in it and all sorts of things. So basically, other than their apartment where they lived, I took care of the rest.
And did you live close to them? Like, how did you even get there to
So, well, depending on where we lived. So, it was anywhere from like a 2 to 5 mile bike ride. So, and in the winter, yeah,
that?
my dad would drop
Hey,
me off, or I'd just walk. So,
I'm flabbergasted because at 10 years of age, I was riding my bike in the neighborhood and
so was I.
getting into trouble. I
Yeah.
wasn't doing, I didn't have my own business.
No. Let's just say I was a little more mature for my age, and having a sister that's 13 years older than you, that had a lot to do with it because, I was by far the youngest one in the house. And my parents they both grew up in large families. So my dad grew up in a family of 20, my mother grew up in a family of 9. So patience wasn't necessarily a big virtue around the house. It's like they were raised a certain way, and I was raised that way as well. Whereas, if your parents tell you something, there's no talking back. There's
Right.
none of that, which was typical Generation X, anyways. Uh, but I look at all these Instagrammers now talking about Gen X, and it's like, okay, yeah, I guess I identify with these people. The latchkey thing.
Yeah.
My parents worked nights, so yes, I went home for lunch. When we lived in an area that I could walk from school to lunch or home for lunch, I would walk home for lunch. Either my lunch would be in the oven, this was before microwaves, or I'd have to cook my own lunch. So, at the age of 7, 8, 9, 10, I was cooking my own lunch. And then I, just sit in front of the TV in the family room and watch the Flintstones while I ate my lunch and then went back to school. And I wasn't the only one in my class doing that. So, you know, today we don't do that. I where we park our bus when we're in Quebec is at our daughter's place, and she has a 12 or 11 and a 13-year-old. And for them to make their own meal is unheard of. Like they wouldn't even think of that. Whereas for me, by that age, I was good. Like I bought my first house when I was 17 years old. So
Really?
yeah,
I guess that shouldn't surprise me if you had your own business at 10.
yeah.
And okay, this is getting more interesting the more we talk. So I'm trying to think of all the directions I want to go. But so when did like efficiency become part of your DNA?
It's always been. So from, cleaning the offices, the old janitor that they had took about 7 to 8 hours to do the offices. I did it in 4, and apparently I did a really good job. So and they didn't look at the time that it took me, they just look at the results.
Hmm.
And same with, working in different companies. One company I worked for was Porter Cable in the 80s. And Porter Cable at the time was very much, in Canada anyways, they were the same company, Delta and Porter Cable, so the woodworking tools. One of my functions there was, excuse me, to go into industry and to go to a large woodworking shop or factory or whatever, look at their look at their operations, what they were doing, how they were doing it, and then write a written report as to how they could increase their efficiency, how they could save time, et cetera, et cetera. And it's just been part of my DNA for my whole life. Trying to find ways to be more efficient and not be afraid to change the status quo. And that's something that, I've been let's say, ostracized from the detailing community a few times for trying to change the status quo. And it has changed over time. 20 years ago, when I was talking to people about rinseless wash, they looked at me like I had three heads and none
Yeah.
of them were pointing in the same direction. Today, most companies have a rinseless wash and it's
Right.
just part of detailing. There's little things that I I bring to the industry or I bring back to the industry, like finishing with a rotary. When I started detailing, everyone finished with a rotary because we didn't have DAs. So it wasn't a special skill and it wasn't something that was, too far off. Today, you mentioned finishing with the rotary to a lot of people. And again, they look at you like you've got three heads and
Right.
it's impossible. It can't be done. The best example of that is Nick. When we started filming for DIY Detail, I said, "Well, we'll pick up the rotary, we'll finish." "What do you mean finishing with a rotary? You can't finish with a rotary." I said, "Yes, you can. It's easy, it's simple, it's fast, it's efficient." And he said, "Oh, yeah, but you guys didn't have nice cars back then." It's like, "Yes, we did." "Yeah, but they must have all been full of swirls." "No, they weren't." Our cars were clean and, we'd finish. The chemicals today are much more advanced than what they were, back in the 80s. The best thing you could use to wipe a car was a cotton diaper. That was like way, if you had like a set of good, clean cotton diapers, you were ahead of everyone else. It's like the $50 microfibers now.
Right.
We'd finish with talcum powder. That was one way of finishing down. Because we're still using wool pads. There was some foam pads, but the foam wasn't that great at the time. So we'd still finish with a fine wool pad and talcum powder was what we'd finish with. And, you can just finish with a damp pad. You don't even need the polish on it. The polish helps. It actually provides more lubrication than it does cut. Your pad is doing more cut than anything else. But so talcum powder works. So if you got some talcum powder at home, you want to try it out, have
Yeah.
fun.
Well, I don't know. I don't know if I'll be doing that,
No.
but that's interesting. So then detailing and the efficiency side of it, just the efficiency just became part of who you were because at an early age you wanted to get the work done quicker
Yeah.
but
Uh,
effectively.
yeah, 100%. We have a saying in Quebec, there's only 24 hours in a day, and you need 8 hours to work, 8 hours to spend with your family, 8 hours to sleep, and 8 hours to make love. And the first one is the least important, and
Interesting.
that's work. So in Quebec, we have a very much a European mentality about us, meaning that leisure time is extremely important. Work is the least important activity you do in your life. It's something that has to be done. So people in Quebec work to live, as opposed to your typical WASP, so white Anglo-Saxon Protestant, however you
Right.
want to call it. You live to work, as opposed instead of working to live. So two completely different things. In Quebec, we have smaller houses, we have smaller cars. It's not the most popular car in Quebec varies between the Honda Civic and the Toyota Corolla. In the US, you guys, it's the Accord and the Camry. A lot of Volkswagens are sold here. A lot of small cars. We have cars that you guys don't have, like in the Nissan range. We have the Micra, which is sold in Europe, sold in Canada, not sold in the U.S.
Hmm.
because it's too small.
Well, we have so many SUVs here.
Yeah. Well, no, we're getting invaded as well.
You are.
But example, the Hyundai Accent is still sold here. I don't think it's sold in the U.S. anymore.
Hmm.
So we have a lot of smaller cars, and especially in Quebec. We like small economical cars. As an example, there was more diesel Volkswagens sold in Quebec than there was in the rest of North America combined.
Wow.
That's how popular they are. But our fuel prices are a little higher here. Like I say, we're, closer to our European brethren in fuel prices as well. We're up around 6.50 a gallon right now. So,
Whoa.
yeah.
If leisure was so important,
Yep.
I'm amazed because you seem, now this is my perception, but
Mhm.
you seem to always be working, like never turning it off.
That's because I never work. I've made a career out of doing what I love to do. And I worked 1 week in my life. 1 week. The other 50 some years, I haven't worked. I've enjoyed what I'm doing, and when I was in a job or a position or even a business that I owned, and it felt like I'm going to work, that's when I'd quit or I'd sell the business. So it was never for me, like I said, I only worked 1 week in my life, and that's because I sold a business, was looking for something to do. My sister was working in a factory. I went to the factory, worked 1 shift and quit, but I gave them till the end of the week, because of the inefficiency. So, it
Yeah.
was at the end of a printing press. My job was to take the roll off, take the crane, put the new roll on. So, just the cores from the paper, it's about the same as the core of this, right? And so very lightweight, they go in a bin. At the end of the shift, I was told you have to take the bin to the warehouse, dump it out, bring it back so the next shift you're good to go. I take the bin, it's on these big beautiful wheels. I wheel it to the warehouse. I dump it out, wheeling back to the machine. The foreman stops me and says, "Whoa, you can't do that." I said, "What do you mean I can't do this?" Well, you're pushing that bin around. You need to do it with a forklift. So that meant going from the machine
Mm.
all the way to the warehouse to get on a forklift, drive the forklift back to the machine, push the thing back to the warehouse, and then empty it by hand anyways. That's the hard part. Then push it back to the machine, bring the forklift back to the warehouse, and walk back to the machine. So a 5-minute job became a half-hour job. And that to me was, I quit right there. So when he told me that, I was like, if this is the way you guys work around here, I'm out of here.
Yeah.
So yeah. So I
Yeah.
worked 1 week in my life. The rest I can honestly say I'm not working. I spend roughly 15 to 16 hours a day, uh, between Facebook comments, YouTube comments, making videos, helping people out. I answer about 150 or 150 text messages a day, maybe 100, 125 on you or Facebook Messenger, and then 50 to 70 emails. So, and
Yeah.
then
It's been
the
amazing to
comments.
me. Yeah. It's been amazing to me to, obviously, I don't see all of that, but just the interaction you've had with all of us in the DIY tuber program and in the Facebook group. Like you always make yourself accessible.
Yeah. To me, that's being respectful to our customer base and our fan base, customer base, however you want to look at it.
Right.
Every time I've owned a company, customer service is the most important part of any company because if you don't serve your customers, you won't be there. They
Right.
won't come back. And another thing for detailers, I'll put this out there, profit is not a bad word. Free is a 4-letter word that starts with F. Think about it. But profits, it's a good word. And if you're not profitable, you are not properly serving your customers. So I know you've got a pimp, and so I hope your pimp, she puts you out there at a good price and a good value. But
Yeah.
that's something that's extremely important. You're never going to live that one down, by the way.
I
Uh,
know.
yeah, I hope she doesn't get offended by that.
No,
But no, okay. So
really
your
hard
wife
to
is
get that name.
good with the title. Okay, excellent.
Yes.
But yeah, so that interaction to me is essential to customer service. I look at other companies, and let's say you as a YouTuber, you put out a video, whatever company, whatever brand product you're featuring on the video, that brand should be at least saying thank you on your video. Should at
Right.
least be,
Right.
at least one comment. And I rarely see that. There's not a lot of companies that are doing that, and it would benefit them all, and it would benefit the creators community to be able to do that as well. When someone asks a question on your video and it's related to a DIY product, it's not up to you to answer that question. It's up to me to answer that question. And you did a video on the Viper stool. Uh,
Mhm.
if someone is asking a question about the Viper stool, I think Viper should be the one answering it, not you. So that's my way of thinking. Apparently, I'm not,
Yeah.
I'm a rare bird for that. There's not a lot of people and not a lot of companies doing that. I'm seeing some of the smaller companies starting to do that, which is great. And hopefully the bigger companies, they can hire someone. You know,
Right.
like
Right.
if I look at a company like Turtle Wax, they do about 500 million in sales a year. I think they can afford someone to, monitor social media and answer
Right.
questions.
Right. Right. No, there's a tremendous value in that. And, I feel so similarly, I guess, to some respect, when I put out a video about a product or a process, I feel a sense of responsibility to respond to those comments.
Yeah.
And if I don't know the answer, I feel responsible to get the answer. But I've noticed you always like, I will answer even in the Facebook group,
Yeah.
I will answer something and you will follow up and come and answer that as well. And
Mhm.
I think almost always, if not always, knock on wood for me, my answers have been accurate.
Yes.
And I always wondered why. Well, I wonder why Ivan wants to, like if I answered it and I answered it correctly, he's still responding. But now I do understand that
Yeah.
you,
The
you
reason I
want to,
do that
yeah,
is because there are some responses that are sometimes not as accurate. We'll put it that way. And it's just when someone sees an answer from myself or from Nick, they go, okay, for sure that's the right answer.
yeah,
And it's just validating the other people that answered. The Facebook group started out as Detailing for Dummies, and it was
right,
founded by Robert DiTerlizzi in Florida. And Robert did a great job. And I was actually member number 2 of that group. So he started, I was the first,
wow,
other than him, I was number 2. And then we just grew it from there. And when we started DIY, Robert was tired of the group. So we just took it over. But that that group was always founded on knowledge and helping the next person out. And there's no such thing as a stupid question. Stupid answers, that person gets deleted.
yeah,
Now, sometimes there are, differences of opinion, that's fine. As long as there's no name calling, we're
right,
good. Uh, and it's also a great learning opportunity because, if someone is asking a process related question, so not a product related question, but a process related question, there's no right way to detail. There could be a few wrong ways, but there's no 100% this is the only way you can do it.
right, right,
And in doing that, when it's a process related question, I'll answer, but I'll also, when every time you post a comment, excuse me, you probably notice that I like all the comments as well. Like I actually read every comment in that group.
mhm,
And some of our moderators do the same thing. They actually read every comment. And, we delete on average about 150 comments a day.
wow,
Yeah. Uh, just when people are making a stupid comment or belittling a person for asking a question, they go on our watch list. And then if that's all they're contributing to the group is telling people that they're wrong, then no, go away. If you're
right,
not providing education, if you're not providing value, if you're not asking a good question as well, like I said, there's no such thing as a stupid question. And when someone asks a question, it's because they don't know the answer. If they knew the answer, they wouldn't be asking the question,
right,
and
right,
that question needs to be answered, and not everyone has the same experience. There's some people in the group that this is the first time they're 16 years old, they just bought a car, and their parents aren't necessarily into keeping the car clean, but it's their new car, it's their new toy, they wanna keep it clean, so what do? They go to Facebook or they go to YouTube, they watch videos, they read groups, they learn, and they ask questions. And there's one young gentleman that comments on our videos, and he's always on yours as well, Gavin. He just turned 16,
Wow.
but he's got a passion, and that's something for myself. I love to feed that passion. I love to
Right.
grow that passion. And detailing is such a pleasurable pastime or hobby, however you want to look at it, or career. And it can be any of those all at the same time. It can be a pastime, it can be a hobby, it can be a career, it can be a passion. It can be, if you look at Christy, Details and Me, one of the
Mhm.
other DIY tubers, uh, she discovered it as a passion through COVID,
Right.
because she was locked up at home. If we look at Antoine, he's a young entrepreneur. He's 19 years old, and going to school to be an accountant, putting himself through school through detailing is just amazing. And yourself, you bought a house with a garage, and it's like,
19,
what do I do with
yeah,
this garage?
and I'm
And
19 and yeah,
yeah, so, you know, there's a lot of reasons people get into detailing,
yeah,
and once they're in, I like to keep them in. You know, I want to help them grow, and it's something that I've been in it for 40 some years. I still learn every day, and it's one of the great things about detailing is you will never know everything, and that is one of the reasons when someone says, they give me the title of master or guru or
yeah,
legend or whatever. It's like, no, I'm not dead yet. And I'll never be a master of detailing because there's always something new to learn. And you can't say you're a master of something if you still have something to learn, as far as I'm concerned. As far as a legend, no, I'm still alive. So, you know, legends are like ghosts, they happen later on. And guru, same thing. I'm not a guru. I just am a person that likes to share. I'm passionate about it, but I love to learn more than anything else. And detailing is something that allows us to learn continually. I do trainings all over the world. And it surprises me to no end how detailers, first of all, are ready to adapt. Secondly, how they love to learn. And third, you can have someone that it's their first day. They've never washed a car before, but they still have something to contribute to the group. And the good groups that I've taught, and most of them are good. There's the odd one that you get one or two people in it that are not fun. But most of the groups, they all recognize that they're there to learn and that everyone can contribute something. And it doesn't matter if it's your first day or your last day. Uh, you can still contribute. So
yep. I think that's such an important trait that people need to recognize and have because then you just get better every day. And that's really the crux of performance improvement and is that the best way today is extinct by the better way that we come up with tomorrow.
100%.
Before we end, I do want to talk just briefly about your journey on like living in a bus
Hmm.
and like how did that originate and now it's like that's almost your brand, if
Yes.
you will, and it gives you the flexibility and mobility that you desire and I think and leverage, in your I'm not even going to call it a career, but in your life.
Right. It's very, we got into living in a bus by accident. So one of my passions is dirt track racing. So we built a bus to go to, basically a tailgater bus or however you want to call it. I'm an official, I work for NASCAR, so I do tech at racetracks. And going to the racetracks, some of them, a dirt track is usually at night or in the evening. We'd finish late and it would be like a 2 to 3 hour drive home.
Mm,
So having the bus allowed us to stay there and drive home the next day. Race finish at 11 o'clock at night and you don't get home till 2 o'clock in the morning. And then you have to go back to another race the next night. Just not a
right.
good life plan.
Not efficient.
Yeah, exactly. So built a bus and just as a weekender, just for the racing. And one year at Christmas time, I always accumulated my hotel cards. And I realized that that one year I had accumulated 200 hotel cards. That means I had spent at least 200 nights away from home. So 200 out of 365 is a good thing.
Right.
By that point, our business was running itself. I'd go away for 2 weeks and the employees wouldn't even notice that I wasn't there. And Sylvie, the same thing. She'd go away she was the one basically running the company, but she'd go away for 3 or 4 days and the employees might clue in on the third day that she wasn't there. So they all had keys. They all just came in, started doing their work. It was on autopilot. One time I had a training in Florida, followed by a training in Kentucky, followed by a training in Tennessee, back to Florida, and then I think Washington, D.C., or, Virginia.
Hmm.
And it was all within a 2-week period. So it would have been fly to Florida, fly back, fly to Kentucky, fly back, fly to Tennessee, fly back. I looked at the cost of all that and I looked at the cost of taking the bus, and it's like, well, we can take the bus. It's actually going to cost us less than flights and all that. Sylvie could come with me, which was a good bonus for me.
Right. Right.
We could bring our kitchen. We had our own bed. I'm not in and out of hotels. I'm not in rental cars. I'm not eating in restaurants. And that was an aha moment. And the longest we'd ever spent in the bus was 3 days. So we went on this journey, and it was a 3-week journey, and it was spectacular. Came back, the house wasn't burnt down, the business wasn't burnt down, the employees, it took them a week to realize we weren't there. So it was always good in life, and at that point, we started looking for our second bus, because the first one, let's just say, you've been to Florida, Bruce.
Yes.
Okay, so you've seen the mountains in Florida. Other states, they call them overpasses.
Yeah.
But, in Florida, those are the high points in the landscape. It would slow down going up an overpass, and it was 62 miles an hour going downhill with a tailwind. That's as fast as it could go. So it wasn't meant as an intercity bus.
Yeah.
So that first bus, provided us that initial trip, and then we quickly sold it, built a second bus, and then during COVID, built the bus that we live in now. But since we've been living in buses, so we've been living full time in buses since 2019, and then part time for 3 years before that. So we've been, in and around the buses a lot. And now, if someone were to say, "Here's a 3,000 square foot house with a big garage and everything, but you have to give up your bus," it'd be like, "No, I'll keep the bus, thanks."
And what about that? Why do you say that?
Well, we had the 3,000 square foot house,
Yeah.
and after we came back from that first bus trip, we realized we sit in 2 chairs in the living room. We sit 2 chairs in the kitchen. We occupy the bed and we go to the bathroom. The rest of the house was empty.
Yeah.
The kids had moved out. So their bedrooms were just sitting empty. The basement, there's nothing happening there. The den, the office, I never used because I don't own a computer. Everything I do is on my phone. So, and I was, that's since the iPhone began, that's how I've been working. I hate computers, or I hate switching back and forth. So the
Mhm.
iPhone allows me to do everything I need to do. Uh, they call it a smartphone. I use it for all its ability. But we looked at this house and we've got this huge house. At the time, I love cars. So we had 10 cars, we had the big garage, the whole thing. And it's like, we're not using any of this. And, I just realized that, yeah, I guess at heart we're minimalist. And it was very, very easy to sell everything off. And it's like, okay, we're moving into the bus. This is good. And, so now everything we own is in the bus, other
And
than a
you
few cars. I still have 3 cars. But anyways.
and you're very happy too.
Oh, yes. Yeah, like I say, neither Sylvia or I would go back to owning a home. So, basically, when they, rip our hands off the steering wheel and say, "You can't drive anymore," then, we'll move into an old folks home. But up until that day, we're still good.
So how have you reconciled that, traveling in a bus is certainly not the most efficient way to travel?
It is, yes and no. So, just about any, movement that we do that's over 3 days. So, let's say I, have to go to Vegas. 3 days in Vegas, we never pay for camping. So having a big tour bus has advantages. People just think you're a band and you can park just about anywhere. and it's 100% off grid. It's all solar, so we don't need to go to campgrounds. So we don't pay for any of that. In 1 year, we might go to a campground 1 or 2 nights out of the year just
Mm.
because it's more convenient or we need water or something like that. But so our costs are very minimal. So
Right.
an example, driving from here to Vegas, uh, if I stay for 5 days, it's cheaper for me to drive there and back in the bus than it is for me to fly, rent a hotel, rental car, all that fun stuff. So, and other than that, we don't pay any mortgage, we don't pay any property taxes, we don't pay any electricity, we don't pay a water bill, we don't pay heating. All is self-contained in the bus. The only thing we have to pay is fuel, obviously, and the maintenance on the bus. Sylvie and I do ourselves, so we pay parts but not labor. And other than that, we filling up our water tank is a every 2 week sort of thing, and the worst it's cost us is $10. So $10 every 2 weeks, not too bad.
Yeah, I'm in amazement because it's a very different lifestyle.
It is. It's out of the out of the norm, obviously. Our kids looked at us like we were crazy when we said, "Hey, we're moving into the bus and selling the house." They're like,
Yeah.
"What? How are you gonna do that? You can't move all your shit into the bus." It's like, "No, what's in the bus is staying in the bus,
Yeah.
and what's in the house, take what you guys want, and we're selling the rest." So it is a very different lifestyle, but it's also a very big community. And there's one event that we go to every year. It's called Schoolie Swarm, and it's a gathering of about 250 nomadic families. In that gathering, you see people there once a year. There's a Facebook group, and we communicate on the Facebook
Mhm.
group. I can be anywhere in North America, and if I need someone or if I need something, there'll be someone from that group that will come and help, and vice versa. So even though we're all nomads and we're all, dispersed and living in different places, it's actually the tightest community I've ever been in
Wow.
terms of everybody is there to help. The Facebook group, everyone that's in that Facebook group has the assumption that they're going to be meeting you face to face at some point. So everyone acts accordingly. There's no keyboard warriors, and it really is a family atmosphere. So, I come from a very large family. My grandparents had 20 kids. So you can imagine the offspring. I don't know most of my cousins. And but in the schoolie group, I can walk around, and out of the 250 buses that are there, with around 700 people because most of them have kids, I know just about everyone. And likewise they know me, so it's a very different once you become a nomad, you're actually moving into a nicer neighborhood.
So is that community from like just in Canada or is it
No, it's
across the US?
worldwide.
Oh,
But
worldwide.
yeah, but Schoolie Swarm happens in Florida in February.
Oh,
But that's the one gathering. But that gathering is, it's like our family reunion without the uncle that no one wants to see.
right.
So, we don't have the strange uncle. We have the
Right.
weird uncle, but we don't have the strange uncle. But everyone there is like family, and
Yeah,
everyone is treated like family as well. So it's a very different thing. You know, how long ago did you move into your house?
2 years.
Okay. And if you walk down the street 5 houses, do you know the name of the person that's in that house?
No.
You ever spoken to them? No, probably not.
Yeah.
Yeah, and, you go 5
And
houses the other way.
I know my immediate neighbors,
Yeah,
but 5 houses is like, I mean, it's
yeah,
like far, it's not obviously, but
right. Whenever we're at a nomadic gathering, like I said, I can walk up to any bus and know who's in it, and I know more about them than I knew about my neighbor next door that was, beside me when I owned a house for 5 years. Um, at the same time, nobody, you know, rarely does anybody eat, excuse me, a meal alone. So normally when we're at a nomadic gathering, there's 5 or 6 throughout the year. But normally when we're at one of those gatherings, we'll have about 20 people sitting around our table. So it's very much a community, even though we're all dispersed. It's
It's
really
it,
it's really interesting.
it's an oxymoron almost. Like I just
Yeah.
thinking of like nomadic as being, remote, alone, self-contained and isolated.
Yeah,
But
self-contained and remote, yes. Isolated and, definitely not. Um, one of our customer service reps, Amy, at DIY Detail, she's also a nomad. That's how I met her. Her and her husband live in a van. So we live in a big tour bus.
right,
They live in a small van, and they've been living in that van for 5 years now. And they go all around the country. Right now, they're in Florida. A few weeks ago, she was in Wisconsin. Before that, they were in California. So they move around. She works remotely for us. All the customer service things are handled. As long as she can get internet, she's good.
right,
So,
right,
so yeah, it's very much a different community. But like I said, if someone needs help, there's always someone there to help. Whereas if you need help around your house, your neighbor 3 doors down is probably not going to help you.
right. Yeah, I
Yeah.
have to go to Doug, my next door neighbor, who
Yeah.
makes fun of me, but other than that, we're all good.
Right. Yeah. And he lets you wash his car once in a while.
Well, yeah, he has 3 or 4 cars, and whenever I need a car, I appeal to them and get it
Yeah.
washed. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
No
No,
one refuses someone cleaning their car. It's a strange thing.
no, but sometimes it's actually that's where my pimp has to work really hard because
Yeah.
sometimes people are like almost it's like it's too good to be true.
Yeah.
And so no, I'm just not, whatever. And I'm like offering to completely detail,
Yeah.
polish, ceramic coat at 0 cost.
Yeah.
0.
Yeah.
You know,
We
they
get we get the same thing when we're filming in Omaha. Like
yeah,
people are like, "Wait a minute, you want to do this to my car and you're not charging me anything. What's the hook? What's the?" It's like, "No, we just need your car in a video.
right.
That's all we're
Right.
asking." So,
Yeah. All right. Well, I've taken a lot of your time.
not a problem.
Thank you. I'm very grateful for
Thank you, Bruce.
everything, but I really do appreciate all the time that you've put forth in this program and, you're an inspiration for what you're doing.
Oh, thank you. And applications are now open for the next level or the next round of DIY tubers. So,
Awesome. Yeah, we have what, like 3 weeks left?
yeah, till the end of September.
Yeah.
So,
It's gone by really fast.
yeah. So, yeah. And, this week's challenge that Bruce is doing right now, uh, I'll portray our age right now, but there's a movie in the 70s called Everything You Ever Wanted to Know About Sex But Were Afraid to Ask. That's the title of this challenge this week is Everything You Ever Wanted to Know About Blank and Were Afraid to Ask. And I guess Bruce's subject was Yvan Lacroix. So,
I really appreciate the time. I do very much.
oh, thank you very much, Bruce.